So if we have an existing housing stock that's being mopped up to some extent by the HCA through RSLs and other organisations, and the potential for new build coming on stream is, listening to everybody, very remote. Where do we go? The government have these great ideas about we're going to be overpopulated, people need homes to live in, they need the right type of home, affordable large houses that families can live in, not just city centre flats. They're talking about millions of properties to be built over up to 2020. Is that just all going to grind to a halt? Is none of those aims going to be achieved?
Well, I think partly it's about trying to keep things going and trying to help people with their existing positions. So if we actually do assist both ourselves and developers with existing stock, that makes it easier for them to move on, and also for banks to help them move on. And we're certainly doing some work in talking to banks to try and understand what they're looking for, and to talk about their priorities and our priorities, so that we have that better understanding, which is kind of a new departure for us, I think, really thinking in those sorts of terms. And we do still have some resource for creating affordable housing, and we can help to use that again in conjunction with mixed use sites, and we'll continue to do that.
The worry for me, though, I mean, let me preface this by saying that Diane and her colleagues at the HCA are doing a fantastic job, and frankly, if they weren't there and hadn't got up to speed so quickly and weren't so well versed in and realistic about what's happening in the marketplace, then we'd all be in a far worse position than we are right now. That being said, they are faced with challenges to their own budget, that there isn't enough actually going around to fund the agencies that exist, and they face their own challenges because of the size of the problem. But there are some. The worrying spectre for me is that because the economics of development and what we've become to know as quite good practice placemaking in cities in terms of density, in terms of form, are going to be pretty impossible to deliver. And where's the default position? Well, it's a small scale, quick turnaround, small amounts of capital requirement, buy 6, sell 6 kind of mentality that resulted in large tracts of suburbia. Historically, if you look at the race to provide housing numbers in the 60s and the 70s, the fear for me is that we end up being driven down this route of making the same mistakes through economic and political expediency that we made 15, 20, 30 years ago. And actually, we run the danger of all the accepted knowledge about urbanism, about falling in love with our cities, which has really only been alive over the last 10 to 15 years, all being thrown out. It's like baby out with the bathwater. That all of that knowledge, all of that profound learning is chucked out because we actually have to resort, through economic expediency and political expediency, to a model that actually has proven to have not worked the last time round. And I think that that's a real issue, and that's one that is going to have to be picked up by politicians of whatever disposition in subsequent administrations. Now, sure, their own revenue streams are going to be challenged, there are going to be fights for priorities, but to allow the ball to drop, just as we've fallen in love with our cities since, and it's really the first time we've had to fall in love with our cities. This last decade has been about learning to love the city as a place, is really challenged if we don't grasp that political agenda.
Yeah, I think you're right to echo Nick's thoughts there. I mean, the moment that demand is strong underlying demand and growing as population grows and household formation grows, but the economics are such that without public subsidy, just nothing can be delivered. What will start to be delivered as markets recover is obviously the most marginal schemes, the schemes that are cheapest, easiest to deliver with the lowest land value, and I think that is a fairly obvious trap waiting for everyone, isn't it?
Which is the lower density, not in the city centre.
Will this government and future government support that view, or will they just see the need to build houses for people to live in, whether that's 6-bedroomed executive detached houses or affordable houses to pick up those that can't get on the housing ladder, and will they just pick the easy options, and will they go to the green belt because it's much easier to just start afresh in the green belt than it is to try and re-engineer your cities?
I wouldn't say it's the easy option. I think it's the it's it might be the most economically advantageous position whereby you're using your assets, thinking more strategically, working cross borders, promoting growth points in that way, and just taking, thinking about the assets of the public sector in particular. That makes sense at the end of the day. We can't move away from that. That really does make sense. And now's the time, really, with the economics and development in the position that it is, to start thinking in those terms and start thinking in terms of using the assets that we have.
I think there is an important wider point about not losing sight of long-term strategy and what's right for the region as a whole. And whilst we may, in the current market, need to do particular things in order to keep things moving, ultimately we want to keep going in the direction of the strategy that we feel is right for the region. And that is more tricky, and it will require us to be more creative in our thinking, and it may require us moving to think about equity and hopefully getting some returns on that much further down the line, but maybe they will be there, and looking for opportunities. So I don't think we're going to just move to the easy option. I think we're going to try and keep our eye on the ball and keep going with what's regionally right and strategically right. But it's not always going to be easy, because it never is.